What do so many diet, fitness, and exercise experts actually fail to address that is causing people not to lose weight and to continue to experience more dysfunction? Stay tuned to this episode to find out more. Welcome back, my friends. My name is Sarah. I am known as Carnivore Yogi. Thank you so much for being here and clicking on today's video. Today's interview is with Randy Lee, who is the author of a new book called Mitochondrial Manifesto. And if you've been around my channel for the last year, you've seen a bit of a shift in my content. Now, I did do an announcement a couple weeks ago that I am actually pregnant. I'll be 23 weeks this Friday, and I'm so grateful. But one of the big aha moments for me in the journey to improve my fertility and have a healthy pregnancy was that I had to understand the way the energy system of the body worked, mitochondrial health. And as you'll hear in this interview with Randy, we really run the gamut of all these topics of mitochondrial health and why the environment we live in, how we live our lives, is very important in relation to how our health plays out. Now, a lot of you know my story that I have worked very hard on my mitochondrial health over the last year. And as a side effect of that, before I got pregnant, I actually was able to release about 30 pounds. So I've become extremely passionate about talking about mitochondrial health, talking about these topics, and I've gone through several certification courses myself, paid actually lots of money to understand these topics in greater detail and talk to experts such as Randy to really convey this information to you guys, my audience. I'll continue to put out more content in the future so you guys can understand these topics on not such a super high scientific complicated level, but just on a really basic level. I also have tons of really affordable courses and webinars that I'm coming out with now. Those are going to be linked down in the show notes for you guys. And if you're a member of my newsletter, stay tuned. My birthday is coming up next weekend, and I will be putting out a discount code for all those courses coming up over the weekend. So make sure you're subscribed. All that'll be down there in the show notes, as well as timestamps for this episode. Now, you're going to notice a ton of timestamps for this episode. That's because there was so much great content in here. I didn't want to leave out anything, and I wanted you guys to go back and listen to different parts of this episode. And those timestamps are going to be brought to you by my two sponsors of today's episode. The first one is going to be Optimal Carnivore. Now, this is a supplement I have been taking during pregnancy. It is called Brain Nourish. And I also take their organ complex and occasionally take their liver complex as well. My code to save at Optimal Carnivore is Carnivore uppercase Y. Their Brain Nourish product is absolutely amazing. It really helps to increase brain function, clarity, all that stuff. And I think it's good for this little guy in here. So check out Optimal Carnivore, link in the information section. Second sponsor is Upgraded Formulas. Another vital thing in pregnancy is magnesium. So this is my go-to source. And I also continue to use their hair tissue mineral analysis for myself and my clients just to fine tune. I don't like people over supplementing. And so the hair tissue mineral analysis from Upgraded Formulas is a really great way to know if you actually need to be taking a lot of things that you're taking. So my code YOGI12 or YOGI will save you at the Upgraded Formulas website. Make sure to check them out and enjoy today's show. All right, guys, thank you so much for coming back and tuning in to today's episode. I'm really excited to have today's guest with me today, Randy Lee. He has this awesome book here, the Mitochondrial Manifesto, which I highly, highly recommend. I have been reading it myself, studying it, lots of great information in there. So thank you so much, Randy, for being here today.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Yeah, it's exciting to have you. And, before we jump into everything, would you just kind of introduce yourself to the audience, how you got to be interested in being a mitochondriac? What's your story that got you hooked into all of this stuff?
Well, yeah, Sarah. As I was growing up, I knew a lot of people with ADD and attention deficit disorder. And they all seem to have common things all kinds of behavioral difficulties, attention problems. And so I was very compelled to learn about where the condition originated, how the biological roots in the body. And that kind of led me to study Dr. Natasha Campbell McBride and Dr. Gary Gordon, who was one of the first guys into detoxing and heavy metals and chelation and toxicity, stuff like that. And one expert led me to another, and I wrote Gut Brain Secrets, which is really about the biochemistry of the body and the gut and how our microbiome influences our psychology and causes ADD and autism, OCD, and a lot of other psychological disorders. But by the time I got done with that, I realized there was something missing from the book. So that led me to study energy medicine and mitochondrial health and the biophysics of the body. So light, water, magnetism, and circadian rhythms, and non-native EMFs and different energies in and around the body. And that kind of completes it, rounds out my knowledge, and I think everyone's how these different things in our environment influence our biology. And that's the final piece to the puzzle, I hope, unless I run across something else. But your mitochondria are at the center of everything that happens in your body, because they produce ATP, which is the energy that runs dozens and dozens of processes in the body. So when you're low on ATP, you have trouble detoxifying, to run your brain function, to regulate your stress levels, and all this kind of stuff, and prevent aging as well. So I believe I have it now. Yeah, you want to jump in there?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's a hard paradigm shift, I think, for people to get there, because I kind of started off similar to you of, looking into the carnivore diet and looking into Dr. McBride and looking into gaps and all those things to say, the food is the root cause. The food is the root cause. And I think that that's the overarching message that a lot of us, get to. And a lot of people never even get there. A lot of people are still out there eating McDonald's and the fast food and the seed oils and all that stuff. So I think it's a good place to get to. I think it's an important understanding to have, is the food is a foundation. But once you begin to dive into the world of, mitochondrial health and understanding light, magnetism, water, circadian rhythms, all these things, the food, it just becomes this piece, right? It's like, if we don't, like you said, if we don't have health at that mitochondrial level, it doesn't matter how hard, how perfectly we do a specific diet if the health of the mitochondria is poor. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, it's kind of like food is the sexy thing and it's the superficial thing that everyone focuses on, but your body either makes good use of your food or it makes poor use of your food based on your mitochondria, because it's sensing your environment and adjusting the way these different constituents, proteins, fats, and carbs are metabolized in the body. So for example, if your mitochondria is mistuned, you'll start putting on more weight. If you're eating foods at the wrong time of year, then your body will naturally want to put on extra fat mass in anticipation of lean times for the fall and winter. And so if you don't understand these foundational things, you're going to corrupt your best efforts.
Agree. Yeah. And that's the big thing right now, because we are heading into summer here. There are some strawberries available and cherries available. And I was just diehard carnivore for the longest time. And now I'm allowing my body to have what's available in my latitude, and I'm not having issues. I'm not gaining weight. It's not causing me problems. And I think that if people could kind of understand a little bit of, why seasonal eating is important, the levels of deuterium perhaps in some of those fruits and things on why we're able to process them better in the summer versus rather than the winter. Maybe that would help them understand the whole, I guess, circadian or circannual eating. Would you think?
Yeah, it's circadian rhythms or seasonal eating is really important because, for example, deuterium is one of the ways that your body adjusts metabolism to suit your season. And deuterium is it's an isotope of hydrogen. It's kind of like a pollutant, but it's also a regulator because it's naturally occurring in the environment. Nature adjusts your metabolism up or down based on its presence. So in summer, it's going to have more of that, more deuterium, and it's going to adjust your metabolism. It's the tuning of the mitochondria, so to speak. And if that is, oh, I lost my train of thought.
Just how our bodies are able to handle higher deuterium foods in the summer versus the winter, right?
Oh yeah, the deuterium actually gets stuck in the mitochondria. There's 5 workstations in the mitochondria called respiratory proteins or cytochromes, and deuterium gets stuck in the 5th cytochrome and it plugs it up, and so it basically wrecks that mitochondria until something can unplug it, or just the body will get rid of that mitochondria, just make some new ones because it's broken. But in the summer, there's more deuterium in that. And nature's way to offset the loss in efficiency is you get more sunlight and you have a different exposures in the environment in the summer. So you're naturally getting more energy from other sources other than food. And so that kind of makes up for it. And it keeps that balance level. It keeps the tuning correct for the season in your body.
Right. And we have to be aligned with nature as well. We can't just sit indoors all day and, eat more of these high deuterium foods. We have to be aligned with nature, going outside for sunrise, spending time in that UV light. When we have higher deuterium and our body is not in tune to, I guess, deal with that, that is one of the things that can slow down that mitochondrial function and have our bodies gain more weight, correct?
Yeah, let's put it this way. People are trying desperately to lose weight through diets and exercise programs and taking supplements and this and that. But deuterium is one of those things that can defeat your best efforts. So it's one of the secret things that you need to know about when you're trying to lose weight. And it's a pretty new field. So we just started to learn about it in the last 10 or 15 years. They've known about deuterium forever, but they didn't know about its role in biology. And so commercial manufacturers are starting to make deuterium depleted water that's low in deuterium. So it basically dilutes your system, and it'll take that low deuterium water into your system, and it'll spread it out to all the different cells in mitochondria. It's actually deuterium depleted water and deuterium depleting protocols are being used in athletics too. There are sports teams that are beginning to use it to enhance energy level and recovery times and things like that. So it's a big deal. And I have yet to run across anyone that is doing a specific diet protocol with deuterium, but I know it's only a matter of time, or maybe I just haven't found them yet.
I don't know that anyone specifically is doing it. I personally, and I've talked about this with a couple other podcast guests, and I had Victor from Lightwater, who's one of the companies that's doing the deuterium depletion on. I had him on probably about almost a year ago now. But I did deuterium depleted water with basically a carnivore keto diet. And I'll tell you, on day 21, I woke up and was like, I would like to go run 5 miles.
I was like, where is this energy coming from? And at the time I was kind of trying to, look at what I was eating and kind of track and say, all right, let me try to stick to a certain amount of food. I got to that point about week 3 with the depletion where there was just no tracking available to me. Like I just had to eat when I was hungry, and I was still losing weight. And I did the protocol for about 4 months. And, I had a couple of my quantum coaches said, you need to stop. You don't want to be on the water indefinitely. Although I do know a couple people who are always on the water, and swear by it, but they, come off of it every now and then you can go back on it, maybe once a year for 90 days or so, just to clean up anything going on in the body. But I did not want to stop the water because I really just felt so amazing when I was doing the deuterium depleted water. So I think it can be really helpful if someone wants to use it for weight loss, or cancer is a big one. I know they're using it for that as well. And like you were mentioning, athletic performance.
Do you know if anyone is, do you know if the body builds a tolerance to the deuterium depleted water?
I don't know if it's necessarily a tolerance, but what was explained to me by a couple of my coaches, one of them's a doctor, was that, if you do have an issue that pops up, like say cancer in the future, and you want to do deuterium depletion, you don't want to already be depleted in your deuterium levels to have those lower levels. You want to have somewhere where you can go to deplete lower down to clean up that cellular issue that might pop up. And so that was their explanation to me as to why I should not just be on the water, 365 days a year. So I trusted those people that were advising me. So that's why I came off it, but I plan on doing it again this winter. So looking forward to it. I've got a couple cases in my basement actually waiting for me. So yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I actually remember the folks at Deuterium Depletion Center, I think it is, called that, of LA. They did say something like that. You don't want to, you want to have somewhere to improve too.
Yes.
You want to have room for improvement.
So, yeah, but I think when you start, a lot of people just have no idea what deuterium even is. And I think it is a huge factor in weight loss, as well as, our mitochondrial health, which is one of the things I really like about your book, is because you explain that a few different places in the book of why, most of our modern diet and exercise plans fail because they fail to address the actual energy system of the body, correct?
Well, the interesting thing is that GMOs and commercial farming, a lot of people suspect that it's not good for you because it has high deuterium level. And deuterium actually helps things grow faster. It helps things mature faster. So when plants have it, they not only give it to, that not only makes them grow faster. So commercial, big ag loves it, but the animals that eat those foods, whether they're corn or what have you, those livestock grow faster. And they mature faster, they put on weight faster, and humans do too. Wow. So across the board, biology or nature uses deuterium to fatten things up, make them mature faster. So that's why industry loves it. But if we want to get away from that and lose weight, then you kind of have to pay attention to the way nature grows things, which is usually much slower than,
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, I say this all the time. I don't know how you feel, but anytime we try to outsmart nature, we lose. That's how I feel.
Yeah. I was thinking about this the other day, is not trying to outsmart nature. Yeah, you might be able to beat nature in certain instances with one particular feature, but imagine for a second that nature has, if it only had several billion years of experience to figure out what works and what doesn't. But I'm thinking it's actually closer to infinite amount of experience. Just by trial and error over an infinite amount of years, you could arrive at solutions that don't have any side effects and work great, for all different scenarios. Whereas man tries to invent one particular feature, like making something grow faster or making it more resistant to this certain insect or a certain influence in the growing cycle. So
yeah, it's true. And a really popular thing that I used to really buy into was supplementation. I have what's called a supplement graveyard in my kitchen. We're getting ready to move, so there's going to be a big supplement purge. But one of the things I didn't really realize about all those supplements and why I've really tried to cut back on those so much is that those are extremely high in deuterium, correct?
Not necessarily. I would say there are people that are speculating that we might use deuterium in supplements as a grading criteria to measure the supplement's quality. Like there's the FDA was looking into a few years back, measuring the deuterium level in supplements to certify it as the top quality type of thing. I saw some documentation to that effect, but haven't heard if they're going to act on that. But
interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I think with everything, we just have to kind of understand risks and benefits. Sometimes there are some supplements that I think can be helpful for people and kind of bridge them to the next place of where they need to go. But if they're not developing the relationship with light, at that time, or magnetism, water, any of those things, and they're just relying upon supplements, it's kind of a waste, in my opinion. What would you say?
Yeah, my thing is, I want to teach you to be your own health boss. So there's a saying in the mitochondrial community: you can't get fully well when you stay in the environment that made you sick. And that also means you can't get fully well when you maintain the old beliefs and your old actions and behaviors that you used to have. You have to learn all these different things in the environment that make you sick or make you well. So that's kind of my thing, is I want to teach you all the things that contribute to your health bank account and on the other side that rob you of your healing capacity and your life force, if you will. So you have to know what influences you and how much. And so you have a general understanding, okay, if I'm going to, break my own rules for this special event or something like that, how much is it actually hurting me? Right. And when you understand all these things, then you can make good decisions. So, no one's perfect. So they always have to be constantly weighing where all these influences are affecting their life, on the good side and the bad side. And one of the things that has been impressed upon me recently is how harmful non-native EMFs are. It affects a lot of different things, from your stress level to your weight to how well your mitochondria run. The stress level has huge impacts, dozens of systemic impacts. And so we all need to learn this stuff if we're going to stay well going into the future.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really tough one for people because, my average listener, when I start talking about things like non-native EMF and structured water and these sorts of things, they, I feel like a tenseness or maybe a glazing over. So they don't really understand how those things affect them on a cellular level. I have a Trifield. Have this guy back here, my Trifield 2, which is, I know, entry level EMF meter. I know it's not like the highest, best one, but it's better than something you can get off Amazon. And that was kind of my light bulb moment to see what was really going on in my environment. But understanding, even though when you see the readings on the meter, perhaps you don't really understand what that's doing to the inside of your body. Can you maybe break that down in layman's terms for anybody who's listening who might be like, I don't think EMF's that bad, like how would you explain that to someone?
Well, the primary thing it does in the body is it produces a systemic stress response, and that basically releases calcium They've shown that calcium, when you're in a stressed state, digestion kind of shuts down, your immune system shuts down, your body starts doing like emergency type procedures. And so you're in a completely different physiological state when you're stressed, in anticipation of going to fight the tiger or you chasing down the tiger, from our ancient past. But the thing is, we are all in a continually stressed state because we're surrounded by Wi-Fi and 5G and all these other non-native fields. And so our bodies are constantly being, like one thing that calcium does is it'll contract the muscles. And so you have all these micro contractions going on all the time, and that's wearing you down. It's using your energy inefficiently, inappropriately. And non-native EMFs also interfere with the efficiency of mitochondrial metabolism. So not only are you not using your, not burning your food efficiently, but it's also reprogramming you to start putting on more weight and things like that. Just, things that you'd never, you can't put two and two together to figure out why this thing is influencing something down the road, because it's so disconnected. But non-native EMFs are a huge deal that people don't, they can easily dismiss it, but it is absolutely proven and real. And one of the proof points is that they've taken some people and given them calcium channel blockers. And so they can block the adverse effects of non-native EMFs by blocking the calcium efflux. So, yeah.
Wow. And in the whole hydration aspect as well, I've read some studies that say just exposing your body to like cell phone radiation has the ability to degrade that easy water by like 15%, I think. I don't know if you've seen that study, but that's a huge piece as well, because our mitochondria is supposed to make that cellular water. And so if we're constantly around non-native EMF, if we're around Wi-Fi, if we've got the cell phone, some women sticking the cell phone in their bra, the men sticking the cell phone in their pockets and never putting it on airplane mode, just letting it kind of radiate, that can also cause dehydration, correct?
Let's see. So dehydration, that's a big issue with non-native EMFs, is that it just basically dehydrates you. And along with that, when you're dehydrated, you can't make what I call ozone, or the industry is calling it EZ water, which is charge separated water. So water has tremendous energy potential. The hydrogens are, hydrogen is what H +1, and then the oxygen is -2. And when it's combined into water, it's a neutral charge, and it doesn't have any energy potential in that state. But when you separate it, like it happens in nature, that around water-loving surfaces, that it starts forming a honeycomb-like sheets around the surface with the E zone has a negative charge and the surrounding water has a positive charge. And that's effectively like a battery. That's one of the things that powers your whole body and cellular activity, is that voltage, that DC electricity. And so when non-native EMFs block even a percentage of that, you're saying 15%, then it could be a very substantial impact on how much electricity your body has to run its activities.
Yeah. And for a lot of my viewers, that are a lot of women over 40 concerned with gaining weight, the weight that begins to show up, perimenopause, menopause, I think a lot of that, yes, there's hormonal changing, shifting that's going on in the body, but also our mitochondria is becoming much less efficient as we age. That's a normal thing that happens after the age of 25. However, we're constantly assaulting our bodies in this day and age by being around these non-native EMFs. And I think speeding up that process, and again, like you were saying, making the body's metabolic, um, you know, uh, way that we carry on our metabolism is less efficient, right?
Yeah, what was the question? Could you repeat that?
Well, I mean, just kind of reiterating the point of these non-native EMFs could be something that's slowing down the metabolism, would you say?
It's interfering, I think, specifically with cytochrome 3 or respiratory protein 3. When food breaks down, it ultimately breaks down into electrons, protons, and photons, or light. And the electrons need to jump through what's called the electron transport chain. They jump from spot to spot. And non-native EMFs, it's like static interference at workstation 3, so to speak, in that it interferes with the efficiency of the burning that produces free radicals that results in less energy, less ATP. And so, free radicals causes aging. Free radicals can damage your DNA and the mitochondria's DNA. And so, yeah, anytime you get away from natural frequencies and you start absorbing unusual frequencies, alien frequencies, then it interferes with nature's tuning of the body, which is very precise and very particular.
Yeah, that's so. What kind of mitigation strategies do you typically recommend to people who are maybe like, okay, I understand this is an issue. What type of things do you tell people are a good idea to do if they want to start mitigating some of these non-native EMFs?
Well, I'm in the retesting phase. I set up a shielding canopy around my bed in combination with some other things like earthing bed sheet. And I went off it and I went back on it last night to retest it and confirm my findings. And I was pretty impressed with how much different my sleep is. And it feels like I have better circulation because I could feel, better circulation in my toes and my extremities. But that's probably the first place you want to start, is shielding your sleeping space against non-native EMFs. And then I would do things like maybe buy an inexpensive meter to measure the various emissions from your devices, your Internet of Things devices. It will impress upon you how strong the signal is from your cell phone. Your smartphone is off the charts.
Yeah.
I have an old DECT phone, which is a wireless landline. Those put out a huge amount of EMFs. Wi-Fi routers,
yes,
Internet of Things devices. I would change your lifestyle habits first, like, I don't know, maybe a shielding, a Faraday bag for your cell phone, your laptop
case. Yeah.
Have a little platform thing underneath your laptop that'll shield your private parts. And start with lifestyle changes that kind of easy. Maybe turn off circuit breakers at night if you have issues, and you can kind of test out what it's actually doing to you. Test for dirty electricity. Yeah, it's a whole thing, but it's such a foundational element. I think people need to learn about it, be more aware, and kind of take steps to remediate their worst influences. And again, you want to understand where all these things rank and the priority, like how bad is that influence? How is it actually affecting me? So you have more resolve when you're, am I going to buy this $1,000 shielding canopy? Should I sport for a remediation specialist coming in? If you don't understand where these things are and how bad they are, you're going to have a tough time justifying it in your mind, spending money and going through all this effort.
I agree. And I would say, it sounds like you agree, the sleep is the place where you really want to start, because that's when your body is doing all the repair functions. And we really want to have that to be, a good environment where we're not being bombarded by a lot of that stress from the non-native electromagnetic fields, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. When you're sleeping, you go through cycles of dreaming and different phases of sleep. And when you can't get into a deep enough sleep level, you can't detoxify, and you have trouble repleting your neurotransmitters and all your biochemicals. Because what happens is you're receiving these EMFs all night. So you have these on your muscles, you have these micro contractions because of the calcium efflux. And so if you can't be completely rested in a resting state, it's like your engine's always running. And exactly, that's the first thing you want to do is your sleeping space. Fix that.
Yeah, we've got a kill switch to kind of turn off any Wi-Fi. We have no Wi-Fi at the new house. We're about to move into a new house. No Wi-Fi there, but we still have it here. So we got a kill switch for that, and then turn off the circuit breakers, because a lot of the stuff running through the walls is not necessarily a good thing. People can get an EMF canopy. And we talked about this a little bit, and there's information in your book about magnetico sleep pads. Can we talk about that just a little bit, and maybe jump into the topic of magnetism, because we're talking a lot about things that deplete our bodies, the non-native EMF, that slow down those processes in the body. But maybe we can talk with people a little bit how we can boost some of those things in the body, right?
Yeah, there's huge misconceptions around magnetism in general.
Mm-hmm.
There's been little magnetic bracelets and little magnetic things you put around your back to ease back pain and arthritis and stuff like that. But magnetism as a modality has not really gained much traction. People still look at it as kind of woo-woo pseudoscience, but I can assure you it's essential. It's not just important. There was a study done where they shielded some study participants. They shielded them from all magnetic fields, and they were in such great distress after just a couple hours. They lost feeling in their toes and their hands, and pretty soon that loss of sensation made its way to the heart and the brain. And they were in such great distress that they had to stop the experiment, because they figured they'd probably become vegetables or be dead in a couple hours without magnetism. So it's like
was that Dr. Valerie Hunt that did that?
Yeah, exactly. If you know anything about how alternators work in cars, you have to energize the outer casing thing, and then the center thing spins, and that pushes electrons out. And atoms do something kind of similar in that you have to energize the atoms with a magnetic field. So when they turn, it's kind of like they're producing energy. But the basics are that without magnetism, you would not be alive for much longer. So if you're in a reversing field, with your field that goes in opposition to the Earth's field, that can take away your energy just as much as when you're in a positive field, going in alignment with the Earth, then it actually gives you more energy. That makes your mitochondria more efficient. They produce more energy without any other input. And so what the Magnetico company did was they invented a magnetic sleep pad that is so big, it acts like one big magnet. So you only get a one-way field coming from the sky going into the Earth. And that enhances the energy level. It enhances the chemistry of the body, because it makes oxidation and reduction happen quicker. And the electron transport chain operates more efficiently because the electrons have more energy, and almost everything works better in the body when you have more magnetism and more energy. But on the other side, when you're in a reversing field or a chaotic field, like an alien magnetic field from dirty electricity in your room, then that's really, really bad for you. That's like cancer in a few months. Wow. Because you're depleting the energy level of certain organs, and then they can't communicate with other organs. Like the brain can't communicate with the pancreas or something like that.
Right.
And that's where all this confusion has come from. Is people have been studying or thinking about the wrong types of fields. A one-way field is an earth type magnetism, and all the other fields have to be bipolar. Because, for example, if you put a little bracelet on your wrist, you can't help but get a reversing field, usually about 40%. So that'll produce an emergency response, and it'll produce an acupuncture-like effect, but that wears off because you're borrowing from another part of the body or another process. You're robbing from Peter to pay Paul.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard of some of these different mats you can lay on, not the magnetico, but a couple of my teachers have been talking about those and how, they'll have testimonials on the website and say, oh, this is fantastic. I've been using it for a couple months and I feel wonderful, but nobody's coming back in 6 months or a year later talking about how wonderful they feel, because it, like you were saying, it kind of creates this, feel good for a second type of a deal. And then over time, they're robbing from other fields, right?
Yeah, that's actually one of the things I kind of highlight is a lot of modalities, and whether they're supplements or programs, is they produce a temporary response.
Yes.
Because they are producing an imbalance or an emergency situation in the body. And that's what you really have to watch out for. Is there's so many different things that, yeah, it can produce a disharmony in the body, and the body will activate emergency procedures, but those wear out after a certain while. So you really have to find things that are complementary to nature. They never wear out. You never gain intolerance. And one-way magnetism is that. And at the same time, bipolar magnetism is exactly the opposite. And so that's where all the confusion comes from. It's kind of funny. There's I have a feeling that's one of the number one ways that people go wrong with their protocols and all their interventions, is they're doing things that are eventually going to be depleted.
Yeah.
It just doesn't continue. But they're emotionally wed to it. They're committed to it because they got such a great reaction initially.
In the beginning, yes.
But a lot of people don't have the reserves to keep borrowing.
Yes. Yeah, that is just jumping away from magnetism for a second. We can jump back into it. But, where I'm working with a lot of women right now that have become heavily addicted to skipping breakfast and drinking coffee and doing fasted workouts, and then not eating till 1 PM. And they feel fantastic for the beginning. And then, a few months in, sometimes a little shorter, sometimes longer, depending on the age and mitochondrial health, then they have this chronic elevated cortisol and things start to go downhill. The hormones tank, they gain the belly weight, they feel terrible, but they're, like you said, they're wedded to it because it gave them this immediate, feeling, because they're running on all these stress hormones yet. And so they're having a really hard time shifting that. I'm trying to do a 21-day leptin reset course right now with a lot of my people. And one of the things that you have to do in my course is you have to eat breakfast every day. You have to watch sunrise every day. And the resistance I get to the eating breakfast is insane. Well, I feel sick if I eat in the morning. And I'm like, you realize that's because your cortisol is too high, because you've tapped out that system so much. And so, just kind of reiterating a little bit, commenting on what you were saying about a lot of these modalities, they give you that initial burst and feeling good, but then you're again robbing another system and it ends up going against you in the end, right?
Well, so I'm kind of curious. Have you heard anything? Have you heard of when you're taking any kind of stimulant that it will prevent you from getting into a ketogenic state? That's the first thought that comes to mind, but I haven't heard anything specifically.
Typically, I mean, sometimes it can elevate the blood glucose. But some people, they have their bulletproof coffee in the morning and they're still in ketosis, and so they say, oh, I'm not going to have the crash. It's not going to be an issue because I've got the ketones and I'm burning the ketone energy. But, you can only run on those stress hormones and cortisol for so long before it begins to cause issues. So some people, it does cause them the kind of the stress hormones from the stimulants can prevent them from initially keto adapting. But if they've been in ketosis for a while, I haven't seen it kick them out of ketosis on a blood meter, breath meter. But just because you're in ketosis doesn't mean that you're not going to stress out your adrenals and you're not going to burn through all that cortisol, right?
I've actually seen some graphs of how stimulants leave the body, the little time scales, and it looks like a bell curve.
Yes,
it goes down rapidly, but it actually stays around. So if you're taking more stimulants day after day after day, it takes that one dose will take several days to completely leave your system. But over a course of days, it looks like sediment. So you're always in a stress state from morning till night, and even when you're sleeping. So if you're taking artificial stimulants, it's even worse. So I think that's a missing understanding in people's ways of living. I agree. They're always stressed 24/7, especially with non-native EMFs and taking external stimulants, coffee or Red Bull.
Yes. Yeah. And, people get discouraged with the quitting coffee. For me, I quit in February 2021. And I was wearing an Oura ring at the time. I don't wear any wearable anymore. I just, I didn't like, I got a new Oura ring and it had this green laser beam. And I was like, nope. Even on airplane mode, it was still emitting this green light. And I just didn't feel comfortable with it on my body any longer after I knew what I did about non-native EMF. But what I did gather, the data that I gathered with the quitting coffee, is it took probably about 60 days. And then my HRV actually doubled from the day I went off coffee. But it took me 2 months for all that coffee, because I'd been a chronic coffee drinker for 20 years. It took 2 months before my body said, oh, we don't have this anymore. Let's double, my HRV actually doubled. And I was like,
really?
Yeah, it took 2 months. And then, over the holidays, I decided I would have a little coffee, just see how it made me feel. That same night I had the coffee, my HRV was back to half-life, back to the half that it was when I had initially quit. So for me, it was plain to see this is not something that my body, and I'm a fast metabolizer of caffeine. I have done the genetic test, but even with the fast metabolizer of caffeine, that gene, it still vastly affects my HRV, my ability to recover when I sleep. So there's that. Yeah. Well, yeah, sorry for my long side note of stimulants, but jumping back into the whole magnetism piece. So, we have these things like a magnetico sleep pad. Can we talk about the magnetism of the earth just a little bit? Because that's a really fascinating topic to me right now, of how the magnetism field? Yes. Yeah. That's very interesting to me.
So I guess back at scientists have measured the magnetic field millions of years ago and thousands of years ago, based on the alignment of magnetite crystals in the geologic formations in the sediment. So they can actually tell that in dinosaur days, the Gauss level was about 300 Gauss. And in Babylonian days, a couple thousand years ago, like was it maybe 3,000 years ago, is what was it, something like 3.5 or something like that. It was around 3. And today it's 0.5. It's a half or even less. It varies throughout the world. In the Atlantic Ocean, it's actually during the day, there's a reversing field because the sun's magnetic field pushes the Earth's field back into it. So there's a reversing field coming out of the Atlantic Ocean in the south and going back into the northern Atlantic. And so a lot of people suspect that when you don't have a magnetic field, the ozone field also goes away. And so there's more UV light hitting the polar ice caps, Greenland, Iceland, around the North Pole. So a lot of people suspect that's actually what's causing the so-called climate change in that area, whereas in the Pacific, the ice caps are actually growing. But the difference for biology is that when you don't have that field, you're seriously, your function is degraded significantly. Yeah.
So the magnetic field of the Earth is another way that, we kind of were talking about that with the magnetico sleep pad, is that our body can gather those electrons to kind of reverse some of the damage from the non-native EMF. So a lot of people talk about grounding. There's studies that show 45 minutes a day of grounding can help to lower blood pressure and inflammation and those types of things. But what's going on with our Earth's surface is that it's actually losing that magnetism, correct?
Yeah, actually, that's a big issue because human biology is meant for, I don't know, somewhere around 3 to 1 Gauss level. That's kind of my impression, is that biology is built for that much, and it's declined so much that it's one of the reasons that people have trouble losing weight. Is they can't produce the energy, they can't metabolize their food properly. And Dr. Dean Bonley, one of the primary researchers in magnetism in the last few decades, he actually did a mini study where he studied how much magnetism is running through office buildings. And what he discovered was that rebar in the concrete walls, like high rises and elevator shafts and walls, will direct some of the magnetism through the walls and away from the center of the room. So people in the center of the room were getting half as much magnetism as the people who had offices in the corner buildings, the corners and the sides. So your executives had twice as much magnetism as normal. Let's say 6, 7, 8 Gauss, and the people in the center, the lower level employees or the run-of-the-mill staff, they got 0.2, 0.3. And so that they're more depleted of energy, and that encourages them to eat more food to make up for that energy loss. And that's that's very interesting. Magnetism can actually be directed away from certain things and toward other things. And it's one of those hidden factors in weight loss or weight gain that we're not aware of.
Wow. Yeah, I think that's a huge thing. And people are going to hear that and say, well, how can I increase my magnetism? What am I doing to leach out my magnetism? What can I do to increase it? Because it obviously is something that could help to help them to lose weight, to eat less, right? Because they have, more energy. What would you say?
Yeah, but we'll start with the caveat. It has to be enhanced Earth type magnetism, a one-way field. And the only way I know how to do that is with a magnetico sleep pad, or moving to a high magnetic field place, which is the Gulf of Mexico, from New Orleans to Mexico, the
really
tip of Mexico. I'm not sure, but that area of the world has a higher magnetic field because the Chicxulub asteroid hit that area and made the mantle of the Earth thinner. So you're actually, those people are closer to the magma core,
Interesting.
which produces the magnetism of the Earth. Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard of, is it La Isla Mujeres is the place in Mexico that you should go if you want that high magnetism. Have you heard of that?
No, I haven't. No.
Yeah, that's what a couple of my quantum teachers have said. That's the place to go if you want to escape and get into that higher magnetism. It's a good place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, personally, I found when I was able to lose weight after being stuck and just frustrated, that for me, it was, I didn't have to move to anywhere else. You know, I still live in a city with a decent amount of EMF, but I had to mitigate my home life. I had to turn off the circuit breaker Wi-Fi. I had to start seeing sunrise. I had to start going outside barefoot, and I had to start getting a lot of sunlight on my skin. You know, my vitamin D level went from a 33 up to over 100 last year without supplements. Just being outside sun exposure. And that was enough for my body, the state that it was in, to release about 30 pounds. So yeah, I think we can hack a little bit and stay in our environment. Some people might need to actually move. But yeah, I live in the South, so we do get vitamin D year round. Not a ton in the winter, but yeah, a good amount here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Would you agree with that? Or would you say people, you know?
Yeah, we all might need to carefully evaluate where we live and the exposures we're getting in that area.
Yeah.
Some people are just unable to get away from all the different fields surrounding them, so they may need to move to a less populated place, especially those who are, you know, they're electrohypersensitive. And so we know that they're in a bad state biologically. They're already depleted of all the adaptive capacity the body can muster.
Yeah.
And those are the people that most people, their biology works the same. It's just that people with electrohypersensitivity are all the way down that where they're totally depleted, and the slightest little thing can set them off. But when you're doing a lot of right things, when you're letting your body be exposed to the cold, when you're eating proper diet, including fats and carbs at the appropriate times.
Yes.
And you're getting away from the worst non-native EMF fields, then you can survive a lot more insults without serious issues. But we're getting to the point where we're all going to be affected, especially with a lot of people were vaccinated and so forth.
Yeah.
So we're rapidly approaching a time where everyone's going to need this information about,
I agree,
what contributes to your health bank account and what depletes you of life force. We're all going to need to know this. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's why I've really just become so passionate about talking about this information, because it is, I see as a huge crisis. You know, as we talked about in the very beginning of our chat, a lot of people are still eating fast food, and they haven't even gotten to the place where they see changing their diet as a benefit. But a lot of my viewers, thank goodness, are on that train of, let's get away from the seed oils and the glyphosate and the GMOs, and let's, you know, try to work with a local farmer and see where our food comes from. And that's great. However, we got to do more. I work with a lot of people who are still chronically ill, even after doing all of those things with the diet. And so I agree with you. We have to continue to get this information out there and to help people truly understand. Like, that's why I really enjoy your book, because I think it's, in layman's terms, we can understand what we need to do, like you were saying, to add to that health bank account.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So any I guess any final thoughts, anything, any takeaways that you would want to give someone who maybe listens to this conversation and they're like, okay, you know, I want to change. I know I need to make these changes. Where should I start? What are the little things I can begin to implement?
I would say learn about, gosh, it sounds like a scary word, biophysics, but learn about
Mm.
light, water, magnetism, focus on your mitochondrial health and circadian rhythms. That's the thing I think we didn't touch on
Yeah,
very
we
much.
didn't. I'd love to. Yeah.
The circadian rhythms and infradian rhythms are the
Mm.
seasonal and daily cycles of the body. Circadian is the daily cycles of stress and sleep. And that's the thing that gets interrupted when we're in non-native fields and when we don't get appropriate real sun exposure. Your body is not able to sync its stress level to the appropriate time of day. And so we're operating in weird adaptive mode. Your body's just kind of confused about what time of day it is based on the sun signals, too much blue light from our LED lights and our smartphones, and inappropriate signals coming from our food because our food was grown in a summertime season, in Mexico or somewhere
Yes.
south, and we're eating it in our winter, which tells the body it's summer, but we're getting a different light signal from our eyes. And so it just confuses the body and makes it go haywire. So learn about all those things. And you're going to be miles ahead and you're going to be more prepared when you're out and you want to eat something and okay, you have to make a decision. How much is this going to hurt me or help me? And then what might I do later to offset the damage that you did? Maybe I'll do something good, or maybe you'll do something really good for yourself and you'll reward yourself later because you contributed to your health bank account.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. And that's the whole thing, after getting off with you, I'm going to be outside trying to get a nice walk in the sunshine, wearing my grounding shoes. Like we still have to expose ourselves to a certain amount of technology, a certain amount of the modern world. I don't know a lot of people that have the luxury of being able to move to a rural environment, leave the family and leave the job and all of that. But there are things that we can do to offset these things like cold exposure, infrared light therapy, grounding, getting a magnetico sleep pad, those types of things, I think can greatly help some people. And making sure you always see sunrise, right? Staying in rhythm with the sun as much as you can.
Mm-hmm. But the main point is you have to know a little bit about the technology before you employ it, because most people just think, this supplement good, that behavior bad. And
right.
As far as cold exposure goes, I had to learn the hard way that over the course of a couple of weeks, I had a little bit of, I tweaked my back swimming, and then I kept doing cold exposure, and it got worse and worse and worse as I ran and biked and lifted and stuff like that. And I determined that cold exposure stomps down inflammation, just smashes it to the ground. And so without inflammation, you can't heal small injuries like that. And so it got worse and worse. And as soon as I stopped doing that, then my body was able to catch up. And but it was the first time I've ever had back spasms like that.
Wow.
Pretty crazy.
That's fascinating. Yeah, I've heard different people say if you're going to strength train the same day you're going to do cold therapy, do the cold therapy first, and then strength train later, and give your body a day to recover from that strength training before you jump back into the plunging.
Yeah. The point is knowledge. You need to know how these things work. You can't just
do it.
Simplistic, this thing good, that thing bad. No,
you're so right.
Yeah.
There's a bell curve with everything. And women, are a little more sensitive to the cold therapy. Also, if you're a cycling woman, I don't recommend you do cold therapy every day. I think more of a schedule, like 3 times a week. I've seen that be better for women who are cycling, because that can stress the body out a little too much, cause some of those hormones to deviate from where they're supposed to be. So education is important. So your book is a good source. I try to provide webinars. I have some friends of mine that do the same thing. So just connect with a quantum practitioner and make sure you understand these modalities for sure.
You actually brought up a good point we should just touch on, is that women in general, their biology is built to have a higher inflammation level. And so that's one of the reasons why they're naturally more inclined to gain weight and they have a harder time losing weight, is because the hormones and chemicals in their body are designed to be a higher stress state and be more susceptible to or more influenced by their environment, whether it's non-native EMFs or cold exposure and stuff like that. So yeah, that's why women have a harder time losing weight.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's where our bodies are designed to do something different than the male body. And so I think that gets lost on a lot of women as well, is that you can't follow exactly what your husband does or this male influencer is telling you to do. There are biological differences that we have to be aware of 100%.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Well, this has been a really fun conversation and hopefully understandable for people that are listening or watching. Definitely recommend checking out Randy's book. Where else could people find you and where can they find your book?
Well, it's on Amazon.com. At the moment, I don't have a website, kind of for strategic reasons, but
Okay.
Yeah, check it out on Amazon.com. And I hope to have Gut Brain Secrets revised and re-edited it's being heavily revised. Hope to have it out by the end of the year 2022.
Great. All right. Well, I'll make sure I link all that in the show notes for everybody so they can find your book. And thanks again for coming on and chatting with me today.
All right. Thanks, Sarah. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Yeah.